So if you've ever been asked, how do we hit $500,000 in cash this month or this quarter, and you really didn't even have an idea where to start, then this is exactly what you need. In this video, I'm going to be walking you through how we reverse engineer outcomes, and not just in theory, but how we actually do this for our clients on a weekly basis. And we never start with leads. We don't start with the headcount of the sales team. We start with the end result that we're trying to achieve, and we work backwards to figure out what KPIs we actually need to hit and what lead sources are driving the right volume. And then ultimately, what workflows reps need to be executing on a daily basis to make the number feel inevitable. And whether we're leading a sales team, building out a CRM, or we're just tired of chasing targets without a clear plan, this will show you exactly how to make your revenue goals feel more predictable instead of panic driven.
All right, so if you want to create predictable outcomes for your business, then this video, again, is going to be for you. We're going to show you exactly how to reverse engineer outcomes and make it as simple as possible, right? We want to make sure that this is predictable, okay? That's what this big word is right here, a predictable outcome. And to do this, there's really two ways of creating an outcome. We either focus on inputs first or we focus on outcome first. And I want to explain why focusing on outcome is just a better way to do this. Now, at the end of the day, we have to ask, what is the outcome that we are trying to achieve? And this video is going to be 500,000 K in revenue for the month. Okay. And we're going to break down and reverse engineer how we hit 500K predictably for our brands. Now, you may or may not be as big as a company that's doing 500K per month. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're doing 20K a month or 3 million a month. We can reverse engineer it in this fashion. Now, we're going to hop over here to this Google Sheet. And the normal way a lot of people are going to do this is they're going to start first with like the source, and then we're going to move into the projected CPL, and then the spend, the leads generated, the app submitted, and we're going to work all the way through this. Now, if you notice, this becomes a pretty tedious process, and you got a lot of things you got to consider. And if you don't have a really clear picture, if you haven't done this 100 times, then you start leaving important things out. Now, this can be a good way to do it, but the better way a lot of times is to start with the revenue target here. Now, we ultimately, the green ones here are assumptions, and we're going to assume whatever we need to. So our close rate is 25%, our show rate is 50%, our app booking percent is 90%, our lead to app rate is 20%, and our cost per lead is $3.20. Now, what this allows us to do is we have our needs over here. So the total closes needed is going to be 100. The number of shows is 400. The number of bookings needed is 800. Our number of applications that we actually need to be submitted is 888, and then we have the number of leads needed to achieve that, which is 4,444, and then the total spend is ultimately going to be this number right here, 14,222. Now, the cool part about this is we can start coming in here and just playing around with these. Hey, what if we increase our show rate to 90%, right? And we can start, playing with this so that these numbers are changing, okay? Now, this is a good way to do it, but an even better way to do it, because we need to make sure we're taking into account these different things. So what we have here is a $500,000 revenue target in the top left-hand corner. And we're basically breaking this down into lead sources now, because we always know that we may have organic, we may have webinars, we may have ads, et cetera, et cetera. So we're doing basically the same thing, but we're breaking it up by the actual lead. So if we have a revenue target of $500,000, we can just plug in our basic assumptions. So our close rate, our show rate, our app to booking rate, our lead to app rate, and then our CPL. Okay. And then we have the average order value here. And then you can see here, I have how many leads, what percentage of total leads are these responsible for? And we get to now play around with these, because once we have this kind of mapped, we can then change anything in the green, or we can change this up here. Okay. So if we want to achieve $500,000 in revenue and the average order value on each lead source is the same, then we can start to delineate every other item on here. So let's say the close rate on lead source one, let's say these are Facebook ads. Let's say these are only closing at 10%. Okay. Let's say these are closing at 50% because they're organic. And then let's say these are closing at, 33% of the time. And these, let's say, are, LinkedIn. Okay. So now we have our 3 lead sources, and I'll just put this here for simplicity. So we have ads, and then we have ultimately organic. Okay. And we now can start transitioning this. So show rate, on ads, let's say typically those are about 60%. Show rate on these are typically going to be better. So we're going to increase that, and then show rate 66%. So what we get to do is start assuming and playing around with this information right here. Now, all of this is just going to update and simply tell us how much money we need to spend, right? And how many leads we need from each, et cetera, et cetera. But it is much easier to start with the $500,000 and work backwards than it would be to start with, the lead source and move forwards. Okay. So now looking at this, we can see that if lead source 1 is 25%, we're responsible for 25% of the revenue. So how do we achieve $125,000 with ads? Well, we need to close 25 deals and an average order value of $5,000, right? So to achieve 25 deals with ads with a 60% show rate, that means we need 250 leads to actually show up, right? Or sorry, the number of leads that we need to show up are 250 because the close rate is 10%. Okay. So we need 250 calls to actually show up. Now we have a 60% show rate, which means we need how many bookings? We need 417. All right. Now, the number of apps, since we have a pretty high, app to booking rate, meaning if they fill out an application, how many actual book a call, we need 463. So to achieve that with a 20% lead to application rate, we need about 2,300 leads from ads per month. And then depending on the cost per lead that we're assuming, right, that's going to be about $7,000 that we need to spend. All right. Now, the cost per lead on this one is $0, right? Because it's organic. And we're still responsible for this right here. So closes needed, we need 25 closes. Number of shows needed, let me copy this and paste that there. Number of shows needed, we need 50 people to show up to the actual calls, which means that we need 63 bookings, we need 69 applications, and we need 347 leads coming from organic, okay? And we don't need to spend any money on that. And then lastly, we have LinkedIn, which is producing 50% of our total revenue, and we are going to need 50 deals from this lead source. The number of shows is going to be 151. The number of bookings needed, 230. Number of applications, 255. And then number of leads needed, 1,275. Okay. Now, this makes it really, really easy because we can tell marketing, hey, we need exactly this many leads, right? But we can always adjust this, right? So if we want to say, hey, we're actually going to bump this up to 15, we can see that we don't need as many leads. All right. And it's pretty straightforward, but we get to play around with these numbers and we get to make our assumptions over here based on our goal. And then it's going to tell us exactly what we need to actually be able to do to produce that result. Now, to take this one step further, if you have multiple products, you will need to include that into this calculation. And you can do the average order value of each product, right? 5,500, 10,000 to 20,000. And then the percentage that you are actually selling these. And you can do one of two things. You can create an average order value based on this breakdown, or you can add in this in here because, depending on what the lead source is, you may or may not sell a specific product to a certain group of individuals. Okay. But this is going to allow you to really play around with these numbers and tell marketing, hey, we're going to need this many leads. And I highly recommend that this is a practice that your marketing team and the sales organization or sales leadership sit down together and go through these numbers, okay? Because how does marketing achieve the number of leads would be the next question. This is only on the sales side. So if we need 1,500 leads from ads, right? How do we achieve those? And then we get to start working on things from the sales ops side, okay? So if we know we have a 60% show rate, and we're not going to be able to produce this many leads, then we can start looking at the leads that we do have, right? How do we increase the show rate? How do we increase this close rate? How do we increase the lead to application rate? And then ultimately, how do we decrease or increase the booking rate? Okay. So I hope this video is helpful. Obviously, you can go super, super deep on this. I'm going to have some other videos on how to create these targets and how to break down these actual revenue numbers. But if you guys have not gone through this with your organization, I highly recommend you do, so that sales and marketing are held accountable to the actual metrics, right? And then having weekly meetings where you are reviewing this. Is the sales team being held accountable to these metrics right here? And then is the marketing team being held accountable to this one simple number over here, which is the 1,543 leads that need to be created to be able to produce the outcome here? Okay. If you guys have questions, comments, or concerns, or you want more information, maybe you want a template of this information, we do have a lot of great templates that we can send you. So leave a like or a comment. Let us know what you need, and we'll try to either make a video on it or make sure that you have a template that you can plug some of your numbers into. Other than that, remember, it's always better to start with the outcome and reverse engineer that, and that you should always be spending time to sit down with your sales and marketing leadership to map this entire thing out so we can stay accountable to the things that actually matter inside of our business.